The narrative starts with Relay North, a woman who was ruthlessly murdering a criminal in an automobile. The next instant, she asks him whether he recognizes her while placing a gun on his chest. She shot him and killed him as soon as he said this. It implies that the thug must have already harmed Relay in some way. And all of this is Relay's way of exacting revenge on him. She kills him and then quickly begins to heal his corpse. She travels to a broken part of Los Angeles after killing Thug. There were a lot of people without a place to live and homeless, and they had just taken up that space. She parks her van there and begins tending to her wound. However, the wound was still causing her face to swell. Then, in her bag, she discovers a box of Peppermint cookies. As she looked at it, she began to wonder where all the negative things had come from. In fact, 5 years ago, Relay and her daughter Carly were heading to the grocery store. She parks her car in a lot before heading there. However, Paige, a mom whose daughter used to attend Carly's class, then shows up. Paige also said that Relay had encircled her parking lot. Relay, however, doesn't seem interested in conversing with her. Paige and her daughter depart from there as a result. Carly is later dropped off at her husband Chris's store by Relay and requests that he get ready for Carly's birthday. She then visits the bank where she used to work. However, Relay's supervisor severely reprimands her for arriving late to work and requesting that she put in extra time. She doesn't listen to anything after that. Chris's friend Mickey unexpectedly shows up at his shop when he is with Carly. Mickey wants to work with Chris on a very risky project. As a result, their family's future would be guaranteed. In reality, he intended to plunder a local drug cartel. Additionally, Mickey was going to force Chris to drive a gateway automobile because of his exceptional driving abilities. In any case, Relay only meets Carly and Chris when she gets to her residence at night. However, Carly's pal fails to attend her celebration, and Paige was the only reason she did it, because she had invited every student in Carly's class to her house for a Christmas party in order to get revenge on Relay. Carly's face is totally depressed as a result. Relay doesn't feel good about having to deal with this on Carly's birthday. Then, in an effort to lift Carly's spirits, Relay chooses to take her to the local fair, where she can purchase anything she wants. Chris also has an idea before heading there, so he calls Mickey. This prohibits him from stealing from the drug cartel because he desired a typical life with his family. However, those individuals depart from that location. Suddenly, a person in a nearby car telephones someone and informs them that he is following Chris, his family, and his friends. Actually, Mickey's scheme was discovered by Garcia, the head of the cocaine gang. As a result, he apprehended him and subjected him to severe torture. He then instructed his friends to murder Chris and his family over the phone. Naturally, Chris declined to do this, but Garcia still didn't want to take any chances going forward, and he killed Mickey viciously right after. Relay was having fun with her family at the same fair. Carly was having a great time as well. They take pictures and ride a bunch of rides. After that, they consume Carly's preferred ice cream. However, Carly and Chris continued enjoying the ice cream. However, Relay heads to the ice cream shop to retrieve the tissue. At that point, Garcia's 3 men exit their vehicle and begin shooting Chris and Carly. They instantly perished as a result. Relay attempts to run in their direction as well. However, after shooting her, they go. Despite being hurt but saved, Relay still visits her family and breaks down in tears. When the police eventually arrived, one of them, Michael, was deeply sorry for Relay's family. However, he is asked to focus on his work by his friend Moises. After 2 days, Relay's eyes opened in the hospital, where she needed to undergo major brain surgery. Michael approaches her and informs her that the murder was committed by Garcia's guys. He had also apprehended a few individuals. Unfortunately, though, there was insufficient evidence to convict Garcia. He was unable to catch him because of this. Additionally, he displays the pictures of the fair that Relay had retrieved from Chris's possessions to her relatives. Relay was extremely upset to see that, but she had to get the people who killed her family punished, so she goes to the police station to point out the suspects. She shot them all while keeping a close eye on them. She can easily tell who all 3 of them are after coming there. After that, she goes home. Moises tells Michael about a police officer who had tried to look into Garcia at one point while Michael is seated outside the police station. But sadly, they found his body later. And in the end, he said Michael should have given up on Garcia's case. Garcia knew people who were higher up in the postal service than he was. That's why even if Garcia is proved wrong, he will be saved. And anyhow, Relay's family is not going to come back to life. After hearing this, Michael too gets afraid, but he doesn't reply to this, while Relay was quitting her residence and relocating somewhere else, since she was missing her family much in that apartment. She cried for a long time, but then Garcia's lawyer showed up at her house out of the blue with a lot of money. and he wanted Relay to withdraw her case. But when Relay got upset, she called the lawyer extremely rudely, and she threw him out of there. After that, when Relay goes for a trial in the court, at that time, the lawyer asks her a lot of unusual things. She had noticed certain drugs in Relay's house, which are used to reduce mental stress, and it also causes memory loss. And while pointing out those drugs, he was trying to argue in front of the lawyer judge that Relay is not entirely in her senses, and by mistake, she has trapped Garcia's crew, while in truth, Relay doesn't know anything about the people who have slaughtered Relay's family. At that time, Relay's lawyer was also pretty calm, and the judge was also paying greater attention to Garcia's lawyer, so that Relay understands that Garcia has made her move forward by donating money to her lawyer and judge. And because of this, the judge dismisses Relay's case the following moment, and leaves these 3 killers. Relay was really angry about this, so she instantly rushes on to slay those killers. She moves ahead to kill them, but then the police catch her, and because of her such actions, she is tried to commit her to mental asylum. But when she is transported to the ambulance, she picks up the cylinder laying nearby and hits it on the head of the paramedic, and gets down from the ambulance and flees away. Anyway, after a while, when Michael and Moises go to the grave of Relay's family, they notice some bloodstains there, which made it plain to them that, after running away, Relay had come there first. And with this, the story carries on for 5 years, where Relay and Moises were on a murder scene, where on a swing in the fair, they had slaughtered those 3 persons and hanged them upside down, who had slain Relay's family. In this case, the FBI also gets involved, and was going to try to find Relay with the FBI officer police of Liza. But Relay's wrath was still not complete, and now she wants to kill all those individuals who were involved in the murder of her family. So now she reloads her firearms, and after seeing the photo of her family, she heads straight to the judge's house, where she had chained the judge with a chair, and shortly she was going to kill him. At the same time, Liza has taken away a lot of information about Relay, which she shares with the officers. Actually, 5 years ago, the bank in where Relay used to work, she had stolen a lot of money from there, and after that she ran away somewhere else. After that, she trained underground fighting at numerous places, and also mastered the skills of wielding weapons. And now, after 5 years, to avenge her family's death, she had returned back to Los Angeles. As soon as she came there, first of all, she had stolen a number of advanced guns and ammunition from a weapon shop, and she was choosing every weapon extremely carefully, as if she knew which weapon she wanted. At the same time, Relay has attached her phone with a bomb in the judge's house, and so after departing from there, she sits in a bus and calls the judge's number, and the judge was killed by the blast of the bomb. After that, Michael also gets a call from an officer in a while, from which he came to know about the death of the judge. But at the same time, he also comes to know about the death of Garcia's lawyer and Relay's lawyer in a very horrific way. Garcia also comes to know about everything from his right-hand Cortez, and he quickly asked to arrange a bounty hunter's team to kill Relay. At the same time, Relay was still in the bus when she notices a little girl who reminds her of Carly, so she delivers a gift to the little girl and asks about her. The father of that little girl was laying unconscious next to her in a condition of alcoholism, and often by doing this, he used to forget the way home. Relay feels extremely horrible to realize this. That's why later, when that man gets up again and goes to an alcohol shop, Relay beats him hard, and then she puts her gun in his mouth and grabs his ID from him. Relay had recalled that man's address, and if that man would have gotten alcohol from anywhere again, then Relay would have gone to his house and killed him. Even Relay refused to sell alcohol to that man till the proprietor of the shop. The proprietor of the shop also agrees to this. However, Relay now buys the same owner's car with large sums of money. She then began to follow a man, Marvin, one of Garcia's main men. She arrives at a supermarket while pursuing him. However, she quickly learns that Garcia is acting improperly in that grocery. For this reason, she builds a base of a homeless person right away and attempts to enter from the rear. Garcia's 2 guards attempt to stop her there. Relay, however, was furious, and she brutally murdered them. Now that she's inside with her rifle, she's heading towards the floor above the structure. She learns that Garcia once used the building to launder money. The Garcia residents seated there are watching the Relay news, because the number of persons Relay has killed was reported in the news. They begin shooting him severely as soon as he gets there. However, Relay's fighting abilities are now truly remarkable. Relay was furious and killed everyone with ease. However, she did not kill Marvin, because Marvin gave her all the details on Garcia's scheme and the remaining hiding places. Marvin then goes straight to Garcia and tells him everything. For this, Garcia becomes enraged with Marvin. But when he learns that Relay burned all of Garcia's money in that building, he becomes utterly insane. The remainder of Garcia's hiding places have likewise been destroyed by Relay. Garcia learns of this from the news. This infuriated him greatly. He was now certain that Relay would go to ruin his drug trafficking enterprise. After that, he hides at home, and he gives his other pals instructions to go to his drug warehouse and murder Relay there. Relay truly shines at night. She takes another glance at the picture of her family before entering. She then imagines Carly in front of her and begins conversing with her. She then entered the warehouse, but it was entirely deserted. All of this was actually a trap. Additionally, a device had been installed in that warehouse by Garcia's group. They explode the bomb as soon as they discover Relay is inside. In the warehouse, this results in a massive explosion. Additionally, Michael and Moises learnt about that explosion. As a result, they headed straight towards the warehouse. Additionally, Garcia's people start racing in their cars as soon as they believe they have destroyed Relay. However, Relay was also spared this time by entering a large hall. She then emerges from the street's other main hall. She then starts to follow them after stealing the neighboring car. They had no knowledge of this. They then inform Garcia over the phone that they have killed Relay. Knowing this makes Garcia very pleased. And Lisa's van has arrived at the location where Relay used to stay. In fact, there used to be a lot of crime there. However, there was no longer any crime occurring there. When she gets there, Relay's graffiti is all over the wall. Additionally, she learns from an elderly man there that Relay was once regarded as an angel by the locals, because she used to keep criminals out of that neighborhood. And as soon as they pull over in front of Relay, Relay murders them both. However, Garcia and Cortez are unaware of this. They are also enjoying a fantastic celebration. They also learnt that Relay was still alive when they saw the news. Garcia also went insane. Abruptly, a car carrying Relay emerges from her home, and as soon as it arrived, it began murdering Garcia residents. Relay was severely damaging whatever was in front of it. Many guards attempt to prevent it. However, Relay's abilities are unmatched. Garcia is still able to hear everything, and she hides and switches off all the lights in the home as soon as she hears the sound of the car. Inside the house, she emerged and began shooting at the guards who were approaching her. Now that Garcia is the last one remaining, he attempts to shoot Relay. Relay, however, gets away from him. When Garcia's gun runs out of ammo, Relay brings him to the gunpoint. Garcia's daughter approached her as she was going to kill him. Relay also begins to miss Carly. Garcia has an opportunity while she is preoccupied, and he picks up the knife in his jeans right away, repeatedly stepping Relay aside. He and his daughter instantly began fleeing. Garcia also discovered that the cops were visiting the cottage outside, so he and Garcia headed off right away. However, Relay has now managed to leave that location as well. She now visits Paige's home first. She struck Paige in the face as soon as she arrived, rendering him unconscious. Later on, she used a chair to bind him. She also pays close attention to Paige on that day. She also threatens to use Paige's house to kill him. Relay was not going to do that, despite Paige's extreme fear. She simply takes his car's keys from Paige's residence. Later on, she departs from that location. Additionally, Moises receives a call from the drugs department when he arrives at Garcia's residence, who said that Michael had not at all cooperated with him. In reality, Michael was instructed to obtain information in order to apprehend Garcia's narcotics organization. However, Garcia is always saved in some way. Moises then discovers that Michael is having an affair with Garcia. Simultaneously, Lisa had just arrived to Relay's van with Michael. It gives him access to all of Relay's weapons. In addition, he came to the realization that Garcia was connected to someone in his department. Michael pulls out his revolver and shoots Lisa as soon as he realizes this. And after telling Garcia everything, he also tells him where Relay's area is. Knowing this, Cortez and his several companions headed straight to that location. However, it was a good thing today that Relay went to a nearby warehouse instead of getting into the van. However, a man from Cortez soon follows. She informed Cortez that Relay had also gone into hiding and that she had seen Relay's blood. However, Relay murders the man right away by dropping a hefty box on him, and she used her gun and walkie-talkie to hide close to him. And now, when Cortez and his buddies arrive, Relay shoots everyone and kills them after making a little burst. She had called Garcia to that location right away. Garcia becomes enraged upon hearing this and begins searching for him. Moises and the others are concerned about Michael and Lisa at the same time. However, Relay now discovered Lisa's lifeless body in a trash can, who had Lisa's phone as well. Relay then phoned Lisa's phone right away and began live streaming from it, which revealed every detail about Garcia and her companions. When Moises and the other officers notice it, they immediately head to the Islam area to apprehend Garcia. Garcia had brought a young daughter to the gunpoint at the same moment. Relay had to move in front of her in order to save her. Garcia begins severely beating her, but Relay does nothing either, since she was aware that the police would soon arrive. Garcia, though, was not going to stop. Relay then takes up a gun that was lying nearby, but the police arrived at the same moment. As a result, everyone in Garcia began to run around. Garcia also believed that Michael had betrayed her. There, she made a police call. After shooting Michael, she flees and murders him. Relay then pursues her, walks to a nearby building, and just as she was about to murder Garcia, Moises and his group arrived and advises Relay to have faith in the legal system. Relay, however, ignores him this time and kills Garcia by shooting him in front of everyone. Relay's shoulder was struck by one of the shots fired by the other police. However, Relay flees after Moises stops everyone. At that point, everyone begins looking for Relay. However, Moises was aware of Relay's whereabouts. The following day, he visits her family's grave, where Relay tells them, in a moment of disbelief, that she has finally completed everything, close to the graves of Chris and Carly. Then Moises approaches her and instructs Relay to proceed, because Relay was in such poor health and could have passed away at any moment. Moises, however, was determined not to let her perish, so he gets Relay admitted to the hospital, and Relay heals quickly. However, while targeting Relay, other politicians mislead her about the result and begin attempting to punish her severely, which Moises found extremely offensive, because, in his opinion, Relay did the right thing and exacted retribution for the death of her family. Additionally, he murdered those who committed the biggest crimes. The unique aspect was that the government was powerless to stop them. Moises goes to thank him for this, and before he leaves, he is holding handcuffs, which at last allowed Relay to get away. What do you think, friends? Did Moises make the correct decision in saving Relay? Please share your thoughts with us in the comments area.